Alright, before you start this lab, you'll want to open up the finished, completed version and take a look at that so you can see what you're working towards. And I'm going to show you how to do pieces of it, and the rest of the animation you'll have to complete on your own using the symbols that I've already provided up here. But the first thing I want to do, currently these are just in pieces, this robot here. So I want to make that into a whole symbol so I can animate it. This is one of the rules of animation, is you can only animate symbols, so I want to make that a symbol. I'm going to grab that. Notice I'm grabbing more than just the robot. What I'm going to do is just lock those layers except for that robot layer. That way I've only got the robot selected. And I'm going to press F8 and I'm going to name this robot front and say OK. And I'm going to choose the type as a graphic. I'll show you why in a second. So just say graphic, robot front, say OK. There it shows up in our library here, robot front. So now it's going to be easy to animate that. So if you remember from the completed version, the robot's kind of moving back and forth to make it look like his engine is running. His engine's on and motorcycles vibrate a little bit, so we want to create that effect. How do we do that? Well, it's a real simple animation. Essentially we want to contain that animation. We want to put that animation inside a little package. That way, you know, the traditional way would be to say, let's get some frames here. I'm just going to press F5. Here's my robot layer. And then I would press F6 and move it a little bit. And then press F6 again. Move it a little bit back. Press F6. So don't do this. I'm just giving you an example. You don't want to do that, because that would take too long. You get that effect, but only for 4 frames. And Flash is a way to contain an animation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to double click inside here, and so now I'm inside robot front. It's so simple. I don't have to use any tweens. These don't necessarily have to be symbols to animate them, because I'm just going to use 2 frames. So on the first frame I'm going to leave as is, and then I'm going to press F6 on my keyboard, and that's going to duplicate everything, and then I'm just going to move it a little bit to the right. So if you look, as that toggles between those two, it looks like as if it's moving because of the motorcycle engine. So let's go back and take a look at it. Now on first appearance it just looks the same. So we put that animation on the inside of robot front, and as we drag the playhead you can see that those 2 frames are looping. So back and forth, back and forth. If this were a movie clip, you wouldn't be able to see this live. You'd just see it standing, and then we would test it, and then we would see it moving. So that's one of the reasons why you would use a graphic instead of a movie clip. Now, I set this file up in scenes, and you could toggle in between those scenes right here at the top of the stage. Just toggle between the different scenes that I've set up. Now you'll have to create some more scenes to do the rest of the animation, and you'll do that through the scene window, which is under Window, Other Panels, Scene. Now I'm just going to dock that up here with my other stuff. So all of these windows you can move around and put wherever you want them, and I'm just going to leave mine there so I can easily access that. So the next thing I want to do is do this next animation, which is the zoom past animation. Just to review motion tweening and creating symbols again. So once again, these are just objects here, and you want to make this into a symbol. I'm going to press F8. I'm going to keep it a graphic. I'm going to name this robot side. Okay. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to get some frames here. So I'm going to select over here and press F5. Let's go ahead and move this to the starting location off screen. Then I'm going to need a tween. So it's a symbol. It's on its own layer by itself. I'm going to right click or control click and say create motion tween. It's going to turn blue. And then I'm just going to move my playhead to the end location here. Maybe frame 15. That'll set up that animation for me. So let's go ahead and test that. So it looks to be a pretty good speed. So he's zooming past. If you just want to test the scene, you can either go up to Control Test Scene, or that's Apple Option Return, and that'll just test the scene rather than the entire movie. So the last thing I want to show you is the cliff jump, because it's a little bit more complicated. If you look at the final, it kind of zooms in, he jumps over, and there's some more intricate movements. So I wanted to show you that. Since we've already created that symbol, I can just drag that from the library here, and as you can see, it's pretty big. And so I'm just going to transform that with the transform tool, make him an adequate size. So this will be a long shot. Camera's like way back so you can see the whole action. Looks like I put that on the wrong layer. Should be on the cycle layer on its own layer by itself. So I'm just going to cut that. Apple X. Click on the cycle layer and press Apple Shift V. That's paste in place. If you just press Apple V, paste that in the center. If you press Apple Shift V, that'll place it, where you had left it or copied it from. So I'm going to zoom in and make sure everything's nice and orderly. So it looks okay. Now what I recommend you do is to kind of think of this animation in chunks. Let's go ahead and look at the final real quick. Okay, so there's a part where he jumps, he's revving up, and then there's a part where he jumps over, and then a part where he lands. So what I recommend is we divide that into the three main sections. The part where he kind of gets to the point where he jumps off, the jumping part, and then section 3 when he lands. So it's going to be easier to animate if you kind of think of it in chunks. The first part I just want to animate from him going off stage to right when he lifts off. And I'm going to do that in about 10 frames. I'm going to select each layer and press F5 so I can get some more time there. This is a symbol by itself on its own layer. So I'm going to click on that on those frames and say right click, create motion tween. So it turns blue. And then I'm going to move this to off stage at the beginning point of that animation, and then at frame 10 I want him just almost off here, getting ready to jump off. So that's just that straight animation here. The next thing I want to do is to do the jumping part of that animation. So what I need is a kind of a new starting point. So what I'm going to do is click the keyframe right beside the end point of that first animation and press F7. That's going to give me like a blank keyframe or fresh start. My background keeps disappearing, so what I'm going to do is press F5 on that cliff layer just so it just stays there. If we want to get rid of some of that later, that's easily done. So at this point, I'm just going to go to the last point and copy that point of the animation. I'm going to go to the next keyframe and press Apple Shift V and kind of move that over, because at this point it would be least off. And I'm going to kind of tilt it. It starts to jump off. He starts to ramp up. So he's jumping off and starting to ramp up. Alright, the next thing I want to do is get some frames. So I'm going to go to frame 35 and press F5 once again. Right click and press create motion tween. And then on frame 35 I just want to put that to where I want it to end up. So I want it kind of tilted a little bit more and just above landing point. Alright, so he takes off and then he kind of jumps. Now objects don't move in space in straight lines, they move in curves. So what I'm going to do is with the selection tool, just grab that line and give it a little curve. The curve will kind of affect the way the animation looks, so you might have to do it a couple times to make the animation look more natural. You'll just want to test it and see how it looks. He curves over there. Now I want you to use that same method to finish out this animation. Then I want you to essentially duplicate the final version of that using your scenes and your scene palette. So don't forget that you can duplicate scenes or create new scenes through that scene palette. You can rearrange these scenes any way you want to, so they don't, they're not locked into that order. So if you want them to be ordered differently, you just move them around. So good luck.